Great to have you here for the first ever PL Dev Summit. I'm going to keep it very, very brief. I'm just going to talk a little bit about why the summit, give you a quick overview about PL. Everybody already knows this, so we'll go fast. I'll touch a little bit on PL Infra more, and then I'll talk about some of the things that we're doing in PLV 11. So inspired by the IPFS thing and Phil Dev Summit, which have been super successful as a way of coordinating people to build and improve a network, we're making the PL Dev Summit. It's a workshop to develop and improve PL itself. The whole point is to have a workshop where we are able to have workshops and sessions that can organize a set of people. Oh, it's working. Yeah. So this is the one from Iceland, I think a year ago. Almost. And the whole point is to just be able to create an environment where we can work together on a bunch of sessions to improve how the network works. So yeah, a lot of folks are already pretty familiar with it. All right, can I move to practice slides? Thanks. So the mode is choose your own adventure, self-organized sessions and conversations. There's a schedule that we have with a bunch of open time, and there's a co-work space. So really self-select into the things that you want to do and you find value in. The things that we build into the network are going to be very individual-driven. Individual and teams will build and manifest structures. So if you want to see something, just make it, and there will be a bunch of infrastructure and resources for people that want to make these kinds of components. So what I would encourage is find people that want the same kinds of things as you, and then think about how to build that. And you might not be able to build it, but you might be able to propose it, and somebody else might then go and get energized by it and build it. And a lot of the Polaris folks are here, and Polaris is oriented to build a lot of the infrastructure in the network or find groups that can help build it. So we'll be taking a lot of these ideas together and then figuring out, triaging which ones of these do we put into the network. So formats, presentations with Q&A and discussion, working sessions, roundtable discussions, workshops, whiteboarding, hallway track. The hallway track, I imagine, will be very healthy. And really any topics, anything you want to work on related to what we're developing or improving. Some sessions will be very specific and very scoped to a particular program. Some sessions will be very broad. And so what I'm most interested in is setting up a product improvement loop for the entire network through this PL Dev Summit to then be able to factor in a lot of the things that people come up with over time. So yeah, the goals: develop PL and PL Infra, align teams, learn about programs that you may not be aware of and how you can leverage them, discuss things, dog food things if relevant, get feedback from people. So this will be, if you're running a program in the network, this would be a great time to ask people for feedback on it, connect with people, and have fun together and spend some time. So here's the schedule. Andrew's going to talk about it in a minute, or not a minute, but right after me. So we'll kind of look at the sessions. And expect most sessions to be very small, and that's on purpose. We want to be able to support a lot of conversations. And really the key thing, though, is that if you run a session, you should have some concrete digital output that then we can track, right? So if you talk about something with a set of folks, it'll only really get done if you either do it yourself or you concretely instantiate some digital asset that then other people can carry on. So just have it as a goal that whatever we come up with should just appear in some document or some slide deck somewhere. Maybe we can make a running doc and a running deck, and you can throw in whatever you want in there. Telegram is also a great place, so make sure you have this to coordinate. We've already built a whole set of channels for each individual session that's registered. Feel free to add any more topics that you want, coordinate with whoever. You should expect that a lot of people in the network are going to be coming and going today and tomorrow because people have a bunch of events. And yeah, just you could even use this to drop the ideas, and we'll mine this later for useful stuff. Great. So quick PL overview. The whole goal of PL is to drive breakthroughs in computing to push humanity forward. We're very focused on a set of things, and we orient ourselves with an innovation network. There's about over 600 teams in the network. There's on the scale of three. I think 3 is actually an underestimate. There's probably on the order of 5 to 7 billion at this point in capital in the network. We'll see how it grows over time. There's about 1,000 and something members, and in registered in the network, and I think there's over 10,000 in the scope of all the organizations, so it's pretty cool. These are the set of our focus areas today: securing the internet and establishing digital human rights, upgrading economies and governance systems, and developing new breakthroughs. Each of these has a whole range of teams that are very focused on those particular focus areas. And then there's a set of teams that are working on the infrastructure to support a lot of those projects, people, and teams. We are very oriented by the R&D pipeline, and we're able to create and harness value on the right side to then be able to route some of that funding to the earlier part of the pipeline. We're focused on the whole network. We leverage venture capital as a business model to be able to route funding to the earlier part of the pipeline where there isn't a lot of funding or a lot of support. And we do that through a structure based on a network of funds, where there are small, scoped individual venture funds or individual impact funds. Impact funds here is like a grant program or an on-chain PGF mechanism or things like that. And we've booted this up over the last couple of years. And we're organized as an innovation network, not a single company. You can think of PL as a composition of teams, people, and projects. At the end of the day, anything in the world gets built by people working in teams to carry out projects, plus a whole set of infrastructure components, and that's what makes up the network. Some of the infrastructure is organized around those pillars, and I'll talk about that in more depth. So you can then think about how to decompose the infrastructure in terms of the builders network to help organize teams, the talent network to help organize people, the funds network to help organize the capital, the projects network, in a sense, that is just booting up in terms of orienting and defining what are projects that people should work on, especially projects that involve many teams. We've built a whole bunch of services for lots of teams. There's connectivity to other networks and other ecosystems, and we're trying to bind all of this together with a lot of tooling, software tooling to help organize people. That tooling is called LabOS. There's a lot of features there. A lot of you already know it. Bunch of software tools that help you navigate and leverage the resources in the network. You can find tons of teams through it and figure out what they do and contact them and whatnot. You can find people, and this makes it easy to search for specific parties that you might not know, but that are either in your particular function or might have similar roles, or might be in a similar domain, or might be in a project or team maybe a stage ahead of you, who could then be like very helpful mentors, or they might be users. And then a set of these also offer office hours to help mentor folks in the network. So really leverage the office hours tooling here. A ton of people get a ton of value out of it. A smaller portion of the software is the projects area. This is booting up, but it's a way of organizing people around long-running projects that span many teams. It just gives you a neat placeholder for something that it's kind of like GitHub in a sense, where GitHub you can list repos. But a lot of people don't use GitHub, or some projects don't quite fit the repo sense. So this is a good placeholder for some of those long-running projects where you want to connect those projects to the teams or the people behind them. There's a IRL gathering tooling that helps everybody understand who's around to be able to facilitate connectivity. So definitely use all of these components. A whole set of folks are already kind of using it to search for specific people and connect with folks and whatnot. There's specific product features that are easy for us to build in here. So in all of this kind of stuff, if you have ideas for how we can make this way more useful for you, Anuj and I and a whole set of other folks would love to hear about it. So think about how to, this summit is a great place to come up with new things, give feedback, and orient the tooling to best suit your needs. On top of all of the software tooling, we have a whole range of programs to help support and grow the network. Things around the builder funnel, things like the PL Dev Guild, hackathons, all kinds of structures. A view into the talent of the network this is where, like I was mentioning these numbers before. Registered in the software, there's about 1,700 people, and the span of people across the entire network is now reaching on the order of like 20,000, which is huge. Now, of course, those 20,000 have very different connectivity to the network. There are some people that are very closely connected, people that are very far away and don't even know about it. But think of that scope as being able to be connected and like made useful through the network. The thing at the bottom shows the stages, so pre-seed, seed, Series A, and so on. So you can see the bulk of the organizations in the network are C to Series A, but then you can also imagine that weighted by the scale of the organizations, a bulk of the people are actually towards the latter stage of the distribution. Some of the funds that we have in the network include the set of VC funds and the blue funds. You can, all these slides are old, but they give you a sense of how they work. This is roughly a breakout of a bunch of the individual little components and how they're starting to work. You can imagine this turning into a website where you can actually see the connectivity between all these funds and see who's, some of these will have individual websites, some of them won't. But this will give you a way of navigating and finding ways to allocate and orient capital towards your projects. We also run a whole range of events every year, everything from founder retreats to lab weeks to local smaller events and dinners, all kinds of events connecting various ecosystems. If you have ideas on how we can make the events more useful for you, the Polaris folks will love to hear about that. And also, if you could find ways of leveraging all the tooling and systems that we have to make whatever events you host easier, that would also be a good source of ideas. We are in the middle of Lab Week. There's a lot of events already put up in the Lab Week calendar. Leverage this because, this helps you coordinate and find whatever you're interested in. So quick view into PLV 11 next year. So we version PL with a specific major number every year so that we can ship upgrades and improve things over time. We're entering PLV 11. This year was awesome in terms of celebrating our 10-year anniversary, which is pretty cool. We're getting into the 11th year. Here's a range of the things that a lot of us are going to be focused on next year. So the first thing is that we're adding a focus area. So we're breaking out neurotech from the new breakthrough section into its own focus area. The reasoning why is that it makes sense to a lot of us to kind of greatly accelerate neurotech in the next 10 years. There's going to be a set of membership tiers that will roll out next year to help organize the teams and people in the network to figure out that gradient of connectivity and make it more useful and legible in software. We're going to continue adding a set of funds, both VC funds and impact funds. And one of the cool things that I'm super glad to be able to ship out next year that I've been trying to work towards for the last few years is the PL alignment assets. So we've had a long-term goal of being able to create some kind of equivalent to PL equity, but in a crypto token type of way, and in a particular asset that can be used by thousands of people or eventually tens of thousands or potentially millions in the future. And there's a lot of features about these assets that we have to test. And so we're going to be running a set of experiments next year where we're going to be able to give a concrete value that that harnesses a bunch of the value of the network. And value of the network here means measured in a lot of the individual assets that make up the network. So think of equities in startups or crypto tokens in crypto networks and so on. And those assets will be able to be given out through a bunch of the mechanisms and programs in the network. So think of if people will create and provide value to the network, we'll be able to create incentive structures to reward that value contribution. So think of this kind of thing as being able to be used for rewarding for in a retro PGF style context, or rewarding for concrete services in time like office hours or mentorship or things like that. So we want to create an environment where the people and teams that are helping make the network way more valuable are getting a piece of the network and the value of the network long term. And again, 2025 is a set of experiments, so we're going to try a few different versions of it to then really stress test them to then figure out exactly what the right version will be in 2026 and beyond. We're also going to emphasize network mentorship, so we're going to build a set of structures to improve the mentorship pieces of the network. So improving office hours. There's this question around helping people with individual growth plans, and it's one of the things that a lot of the people in the network can help with, because maybe your team or company is small, but you can definitely find deep experts in your function somewhere else in the network, and helping build a connectivity lattice there could be super helpful to a lot of people. We hope to strengthen the PL brand in Web3 and crypto, in neurotech specifically, and then broadly in the startup community. We already have a pretty strong brand in Web3 and crypto. We are starting to have a brand in neurotech, but I think in the broader startup community, PL is still like not a known quantity, and that's going to be a focus area for us next year. And then there's a whole range of product-oriented optimization things. So build a strong product improvement loop. Things like this PL Dev Summit are the beginning of that. Drive to data-driven optimization across the network to give people metrics to know what we're optimizing for. Get to product market fit with LabOS. And try to figure out how to leverage the utility of LLMs and AI agents and so on to help do a lot of the heavy lifting in connectivity. There's already a lot of really cool experiments that Anuj and others have been building to help with this. And so yeah, if you have like crazy ideas, like today and tomorrow are like the day to describe those. And yeah, in the long term, we want to create this like network native development structure to improve whatever you want about the network. And one of the things about this is, if you think about the focus areas, each of these is fairly different and behaves different. So the first two are very crypto native. The latter two are not crypto native at all, and they behave like traditional tech startups or traditional labs. And so the features and functionality that each of these groups want is different. And so we'll be building structures to enable that. So product market fit in each of these is slightly different. There are some commonalities that will apply everywhere. But don't be dissuaded by the differences. Describe and build the things that you need. And we'll have good ways of just selecting the programs that are relevant for each particular team or group. So yeah, this is kind of like a view on applying good customer feedback loops to PL. One thing that I'm pretty excited about is we have a sense of network OKRs or network APIs to help organize a lot of teams. So we'll be rolling that out as a way of measuring how we're doing. We're kind of currently a level 3 innovation network. And someday we'll get to like level 7 innovation network. YC is probably like 5 or 6, I would say. So yeah, we'll get there. Cool, that's it for me. I'll maybe take a few questions and then hand it over to Andrew, if any. Yep. What are the levels of an innovation network? Yeah, we picked 7 because that's roughly how it broke out. But there's a whole spreadsheet that we can go to. I'll run a session later that kind of goes into the things that are in there. It's currently like very drafty because yeah, we have to go through a few iterations of like aligning the right things. But you can measure an innovation network in terms of different things like how many, what does it mean in terms of the scale of teams or the scale of people involved or the scale of capital involved or the scale of innovations that you're doing along the way or different products. And so you can like, think of, maybe you can think of YC as like beginning at the very beginning with, I think it was like a $2 million fund or so and funding 10 teams. And that was like the booting of a network of some kind. And now they're probably in the 4 to 5,000, no, probably 10,000 people, founders that have funded, and then probably 100, probably nearing on many hundreds of thousands of people employed through all of those companies. And in terms of the economic value, I think it's something like 60 billion. I don't know. Like the YC website can show it. But anyway, that's kind of like a view into the scale. And then you can think of maybe something like Silicon Valley, which is not a single organization that booted it, as another innovation network that fairly old. And you can think of that beginning with HP and Termin, and then over time having a few more companies and taking a few decades, and then now today is like really massive in terms of its global impact. But yeah, you can like, part of the thing that we have to do is because these innovation network things are so weird and people don't kind of, we don't have like, we have hundreds of millions to billions of companies, and so we know how to like think about and measure companies, and companies are pretty old. But these innovation network things, we don't have that many of them, and because we don't have that many of them, it's harder to measure them and understand them, and so there's less written about them. It's very, very fuzzy today, but just because something is fuzzy doesn't mean you can't make it very concrete. It's just nobody has done it yet. Or there's some thinking in the literature, but it is not a common thing that people do. Cool. Other questions?
This is sort of a question, sort of like something I would love to get out of this time. So I used to work for a company called Protocol Labs. I used to be an employee of that company, yeah. And now I've never been I never did YC. I don't know. I don't really have a reference point here, right? Like, yep. I would really love to understand like what it is concretely that we can all do for each other, right? Because like I'm now like at a little bit of a moment coming in, I'm like, I'm right back at PL, like, but I'm really open to the network concept, but I really want to understand what that means, right? Like I don't know.
So. Kind of if you zoom out away from the concretely instantiated structures that the world has built, like corporations, at the end of the day, it's like a set of people want to achieve some impact and want to do something, and they organize together and find ways of doing that. So cities are a version of that, or whatever. And so, sorry, I think this went. That is not what my screen is showing. Oh, there we go. Cool. So you can think of concretely anything that you need to help do what you're doing in your innovation landscape better is fair game for this network to help you with. The question is, what structures are likely to emerge because they're like low friction to build or lower friction to build, and such that we can create a good positive sum-oriented way of generating that, because when people help each other, they like incur a cost, but that cost should come with a greater benefit in the long term. Right. So all of it is just articulating very concrete, specific ways, and so which is kind of like what your question is about. Yeah. In places like YC or places like Silicon Valley, there's a mix of culture and norms that cause certain things. So for example, there's a very strong pay-it-forward culture in Silicon Valley where a generation of people end up just starting out and want help, and they tend to be able to receive help very readily because that prior generation got helped a lot. And that got kicked off somewhere in the 50s, 60s, and they sort of just compounded over a few decades. So now you can have like a very natural help each other sort of culture. In YC, you have an environment where it's even stacked because lots of founders in the YC network are able to like, there's a much higher likelihood that they'll get the attention of other people that have gone through the network. So the probability that you'll get more attention is higher. So that builds like some connectivity lattice. That's already the case with us, but we're taking it a level above, which is concretely giving people a feature on software where like you can book office hours to talk to them. Then sometimes they could be users, right? So a very common thing in these networks is to be able to find users for your concrete product. So oftentimes you end up building something that other people need. A good example of this is like a lot of the SaaS companies in the last 10, 20 years have their first range of customers have been other companies in the network. Then there's all kinds of like softer, maybe more important things in particular moments. So they can be very helpful in giving advice around large, complicated, hard things. Like building companies is very hard, and it's much more knowable now. Like there's a lot more written and described today than there was 10 years ago. So it's a lot easier to find the knowledge. But it can be extremely helpful to be able to tap somebody who has like gone through something before, and a network like this is very helpful because you don't just find one person that has gone through it. You can find several people that have gone through it, and then interpolate from their experiences, because you can often get advice that might be good for them, but might not be quite applicable for you. And so having the ability to collect a few data points suddenly becomes really, really useful. So a lot of it is like creating these environments where by creating like good positive sum reciprocity type structures, we can enable people to help each other a lot. And then if we can increase that through things like the alignment asset, we're like, hey, not only do you get the incentive of creating a positive sum orientation that if you help people, they'll help you, but in addition, if like the time that you're spending doing that comes into with like a long-term share of the network, like that like can compound even stronger. So part of what today and tomorrow are about is like finding lots of very concrete ways that you want help with, or that you think you can help the network with, to then figure out where there's commonality, and then where do we invest time into building structures or programs or features in software or whatever to make that easier.